When I kind of get invited along to speak to other sports, I always kind of think, well, what are the people in the room going to think? Judo, rowing, what's the connection there? And it always kind of challenges me a wee bit into how to build a rapport. And although I'm just from the other side of the city, this is the first time I've actually ever been to Strathclyde, parts of from Clydebank, just across the other side of the city. This is the first time I've actually been here. And actually, I couldn't think of how I was going to build rapport with you. But then I was driving up the side of the water. I remember the story. I've actually been involved in a race that involved a boat. Now, I know there's a difference in canoe and rowing. I know there's a difference, and this was a canoe rather than race. But I'll just quickly tell you this story because I think you probably find it quite amusing, and it'll really help us build rapport. I was on a conditioning camp in I think it was South Africa we were in. For preparation for one of the Olympic Games, and it was non-judo, so it was non-mat-based camp, and the coaching staff were getting us to do kind of different stuff, and where we were, there was a facility very similar to such as here. So the idea was that we would take part in what was it? There must have been something going on at the weekend, a race, and it was a canoe, then a bike, and then a run. So training methodology in those days for judo was a bit different. And nowadays our guys don't do any aerobic based stuff off the mat. But that day we done quite a lot, so I thought I'm going to be okay at this. And you'll be pleased to know the canoe went all right. Maybe it wasn't fast, but wasn't too far from the back. The cycle went okay, but I was certainly towards the back end of the field. But I'd never done a bike to run before, and and there's some people I obviously recognise that have, and I had that outer body experience, and I quickly went to the back of the field. Now there's a couple of athletes. It was on a loop, and there's a couple of the other guys were, they were licking ice creams at the side, and they were torturing me as I was going past. But that wasn't the worst thing. On the last lap, I could hear somebody coming up behind me, and I knew they'd been telling me, "Come on, you're almost like your third last, your second last." And I think, God, if somebody's coming, I know I'm going to be last. And I go, I'm digging. And the strangest thing happened. I seen this pair of socks coming beside me. And it was for 10 seconds later, the person actually came past me. It was this little lad who was running, not in a pair of shoes, just running a pair of rugby socks that were 5 sizes too big for him, and they were flapping in front of his feet. So I actually do have experience of being in a race that involved a boat, but unfortunately I came last in a photo finished a pair of rugby socks. But that's so. What will we get for the next 20 minutes from me? So when I click on a couple of slides, can I talk a little bit about my journey? I don't have an academic background in coaching or an academic background in sports science, so you're not going to get any models or any data presented to you. I'm not very funny either, so you're probably not get too many lads. I discovered that as a younger man in bars and pubs around the city. I'm not very funny. I had to adopt a different angle. But hopefully what you'll get is probably just kind of revisiting some things you've thought in the past, and you kind of go, all right, that's interesting that somebody else thinks that, or all right, yeah, that's I forgot about that. Maybe it's just, and I apologise for the simplicity of what I'm going to touch on. But coming out of 2014, which was relatively a big year for judo, and moving into the next cycles, it's these kind of simple ideas that kind of stuck in my mind, because I think it's when you don't do the simple things, or you don't remember the simple things, it blows a hole in your program. The little complicated bits and pieces here and there, you don't do them right. You usually find that there's an impact to performance, of course, there's an impact to outcome, but it doesn't generally blow a hole in the middle of what you're doing. But if you forget the simple things, it quite often does. So that's what you get. First of all, though, and I was really kind of interested. I sat in Mark speaking. I was really kind of interested in listening to kind of conversations around, I suppose, an organisational commitment to personal development or CPD. And I was kind of interested because I suppose on a certain level, what I kind of got from the body of the Kirk, so to speak, was that everybody kind of gets this. And really what I was going to pop up here is my justification whenever I speak to the guys that I work with, the coaching team that I work with, or the sports and science and medicine team that I work with, or the players, or the extended team that I work with, is that, listen, we have to commit to getting better, because it's the only sustainable way of moving forward as a team, as a performance, as a sport. Sure, I think British sport has been, and your sport in particular, has been a fantastic example of if you put more money in, there is a certain correlation to improvement in performance. But there starts to be but that's not an exact science. Just throwing money at a problem doesn't always fix it. We know that from many facets of our life, and certainly there's a diminishing return. And equally so, just identifying better raw material. So taking an athlete from this sport, or having better talent ID, or bringing in a new foreign coach. Certainly in a Scottish perspective, a population of 5 million, if every sport does that, we're going to meet challenges, and to have sustainable progress is going to be difficult. However, if every single person who's involved with the sport makes a commitment to try and get better, then I feel that not only can the impact on performance, and I'm obviously speaking from a perspective of performance here, but I think it probably fits from most departments of a sport. If every single person commits to getting better, then not only can significant improvements be made, but they're sustainable. I mean, it's like eco-friendly. It can just go on and on and on and on and on. It was really interesting to me that when I was listening to people speaking, I can't remember who asked the first question. Somebody asked the first question. I thought, oh, this is going to be challenging. When I got to speak. But then actually, as the conversation panned on, everybody I felt kind of bought into that philosophy. And I think probably the rest of the chat went on. It's just the logistics. It's just the logistics around that. It's just the implementation. And I think it's really important to kind of remember that the governing bodies. There was a little bit of chat about older coaches, and it was almost as if these guys don't commit to CPD. They will, just in their own way. But the governing bodies get a commitment to kind of standardise everybody and bring everybody in. And sometimes that becomes, excuse my French, becomes a bit of a pain in the bum, or it becomes bureaucratic, or it seems as if it's cost attached. But that's it, because the governing bodies get that tricky job of trying to pick the line for everybody. But I think as the sport goes through that journey, it's really just important to remember that the only sustainable performance, the only sustainable progress is through us getting better at doing our job over and over and over again. Okay, this is my journey. If I had probably 4 or 5 years ago, if you can ask me what's your journey to be a coach, I would have said this. I retired as an athlete in 2004, and I was really lucky within our SGB or NGB, GB level. There was kind of new people had kind of come into the coach development department, and initially I went to work in a club environment, and it was a bit like a kind of PE teaching experience. I was doing club to school links, but I was also setting up regional pathways and different stuff like that. But I suppose I was in those first initial years, I was on the mat delivering, God knows, till I was numbing the brain. And then through the work that I kind of done there, I went on and worked with the national governing body and a number of different roles and capacities, which has seen me involved in Beijing, London, and Glasgow. And I've been really lucky at that time that my development as a coach, I think, unlike perhaps my predecessors, the people in charge responsible for or who thought they were responsible for my development, of course, that always falls to me. I think probably for the first time ever, they kind of came at it as if I was a player. So they tried to build a profile of what they wanted a national coach to look like 8 years in advance, and they tried to put together a periodised programme of responsibility and different stuff to kind of help. And I think that's quite an interesting way to look at it. However, with a wee bit more reflection, I'd actually say this is my journey as a coach. This is my training to be a coach, and it really started in the first time that I stepped on the mat in 1981 as a 7-year-old. You'll be able to work out age from there, I suppose. Good arithmetic. And the reason I say that, because now that I'm a wee bit more responsible for development of of other coaches. I mean, I sit down and kind of go. I had to sit down and kind of go, right, what's the kind of pillars of knowledge here, or skills and experience? And actually, a lot of those things that I think are core competencies started away back down there in 1981. So my technical tactical model, my coaching style is all influenced by my early experience and introduction to the fundamentals of the sport, or the coaches that I worked with along the way, in terms of giving me a framework of the coach I want to be, or the coach I don't want to be. And I think that's of relevance when you're thinking about when you're talking about CPD, because it kind of indicates, you know, the kind of it really is that there's opportunity for so much transferability and so much lifelong learning. But I suppose enough about me. What I thought would be kind of quite useful, because I don't have, like I said, I don't have any models, or I don't have any grand ideas or any data to present. But I thought I just would kind of float on a few ideas that are, I feel, of relevance if you're going to say, right, okay, I'm going to commit to CP. I'm going to commit to personal development. I'm going to commit to trying to facilitate organisational development as a whole. If you make that step in your head, I suppose just kind of got a few thoughts. Well, if you do this, you might be able to commit to that more sustainably. Or if you do that, let's have a wee watch out for this, because that may kick you up the bum, and actually those good intentions might end up having a negative impact. And the first of those wee ideas is, you know, make it emotional. Tie it into something emotional. We all know when we are trying to achieve an objective, or we're trying to lead a group. If we can tie that to an emotional need of an individual, it can make it all that more powerful. You get more buy-in, ownership, etc. All goes through the roof. I don't see how that's any different for our own personal development. Committing to your own personal development takes a huge amount of commitment. It quite often involves you stripping back the veneer and having a good look at yourself. It quite often brings you to challenging some things that you've done for a long period of time, which is quite a significant challenge. It's much easier to speak about making changes to somebody else than it is about changing it. And if you replay some of the conversations you have in your head, you know, it's quite often about changing athletes, changing players, changing roles in your case, you know. And you know, and you see how it's challenging to do that. Take that back a few steps to yourself, and it's even more challenging to do to yourself, I believe. And therefore, I think if you're going to do that, it's the same kind of philosophy holds true. You've got to kind of tie it into some type of emotional, because it's going to be a hard journey to see through and do it. For our group of coaches that we kind of brought together for Glasgow, you know, real spectrum. I got from listening to the chat a little bit earlier on. I kind of got a feel for, you know, the diversity of rowing coaches, and I suspect the team that we brought together would almost be a sample case for that. And I thought at first that's going to be really easy, you know, to tie an emotional thread to why I want us to work differently. So I wanted this to be a wee bit more progressive. Judo's a very traditional sport, it's quite hierarchical, and I kind of felt that the methodology that the coaching staff or the performance team had used needed to be a bit more progressive, certainly needed to be more integrated. However, I was fairly aware that was going to provide challenge for the team. But I thought it's okay. I'll just tie it to we're Scottish. You know, it's a Scottish team. It's the first time judo's been in the Commonwealth Games for 12 years. Everybody will relate to that. You know, but then I forgot the small fact that half the coaching staff weren't Scottish, and actually the other half of the coaching staff had an interesting perspective on each other's Scottishness. So that quickly fell about the feet. But we just had to kind of come together. It was. I don't think it was any less true that we needed to tie it to emotional thread, and I think we kind of done that in a way. It wasn't purely about being Scottish, but there was some other stuff that we pulled in there. And I think certainly that helped contribute to motivating and seeing through some of the changes or some of the development that some of the staff had to do. Of course, and those of you who can see the picture, a Scots man or woman in a fighting sport, fighting at home, you've got to be very careful that whatever emotional thread you tap into, you don't take it too far and the staff invade the pitch and snap the crossbar and take some of the turf from them. For some of you will remember the picture. So that's the first thing. I suppose the second thing I've got in mind to keep in mind if when you're committing to, and this is a real personal one for me. As I said earlier, was of the opinion that, and it's probably shaped by some of my experiences as an athlete. The coach I wanted to be, coach I didn't want to be, the programme I wanted to kind of manage, the programme I didn't want to manage. I wanted to be a bit more progressive. Also be a bit insecure in myself as well as an individual, so I'm always looking to change and develop. And it means I have a propensity to, jump on fads, do this, what's the latest thing, and do that, and just do things for the sake of doing it because, that simple philosophy. If we're going to be better, we got to change. But it's not strictly true as that, because it only really is going to matter if actually the thing you're changing, the thing you're developing, the thing you're trying to implement is going to make a difference. There's one of the GB rowers that I sat in a workshop. You'll probably recognise it. If it makes the boat go faster, does that ring a bell? Exact same thing. It's only really going to, you got to keep one eye on if is it going to make the boat go faster. And I think myself as an individual, I'm really aware that coming out of the past few years of London and Glasgow cycle, certainly I jumped on the back of a few fads or a few ideas without really fully scoping out the true value of what that was going to be. And I suppose the flip side of that is, it's all very well making those, so if I'm going to develop a skill, because we've done the scoping exercise, this is going to improve me as an individual, us as a team, I go away and I upskill myself or I obtain that knowledge, I'm actually going to do it all the time as well. And this, I suppose this is the resonance of this picture here. This is a piper from the First World War. I'm pretty sure when somebody suggested, right, I think it'll be massively inspirational for our team if somebody can play the bagpipes, when we're and he's like, oh, that's a gig for me. Yeah, give me that. I'll do that. But then when I actually came to the day getting out the trenches, I'm wondering how motivated he was still to do that role, So I think when we're scoping out areas of development, personal development, one, is it going to make a difference, and two, are we going to have the discipline to see those to do those jobs? I suppose in the coaching context, there are not enough people qualified to drive a 17-seater minibus, so we spend as an organisation, all our level 2 coaches who are involved in the national programme, me speaking from example obviously here, we're all going to qualify, and then you still can't find anybody who's willing to drive the bus to Europe. So they've got to be further scoped out, those types of ideas, and that's at the back of our mind. Okay, physicists amongst you will recognise Newton's third law, I'm sure. Every action has a reaction. Okay, so that's me. That's our heavyweight. If I slap him in the chops, there's going to be a reaction there. It's not going to be very good for me. But I think there's a implication here for CPD as well. So many well-intentioned plans have ended up in making things back just because we've not quite thought through what the impact is going to be. So, for example, we think we should do this. So I think we should develop this. I go away and develop this, and I introduce this into a training environment, but we don't realise what effect this has on that cog over this side here. we had I suppose one real big example of this in the run into Glasgow. The nature of judo, as I'm sure you can imagine, the number of injuries that we get is really essentially they're trying to break each other to get the other person on the back. So especially shoulders and knees, it's very, very tough on the sport, and we constantly put that together with a sport who's maybe perceived as being not as progressive for a number of years, and it can lead to quite a frustration from the sports science and medicine team, or particularly the sports science and medicine team that are who are picking up the bill. I was very conscious of when I came into a kind of managerial role in the programme of that dynamic, that pressure. So 18 months out for the games, being responsible. Okay, we're going to have a review of an injury audit. We're going to look at. We're going to get everything on the table. What we can do. We'll upskill ourselves. And we'll put it in place. Nobody can argue with that. It's affecting the bottom line. It's going to make the athletes more robust, less injured, but also in the application increase quite significantly the volume of training time to put in these new interventions, which wouldn't have been, but it wasn't massively. But the age profile, as a team qualified for Glasgow, the age profile of our team was actually closer to some of us, closer to this side of the room than that side of the room. Present company excluded, of course. So actually something that was really, really well intentioned, and went away, and we never done it by half measure. We upskilled the coaches and their understanding of what was going on and how to deliver, build these interventions into the training programs. But actually, athletes started, the injury rate got worse for a wee bit and it comes down to this, even well-intentioned actions quite often have a negative reaction. I'm just aware of the clock. I do have the capacity to bob around. I think I'm conscious of time, so I'll kind of skip past this one here because I like this one. This is a good thing. You can understand why I like it. When I flip this picture up, I always kind of say to people, is there anything wrong with this picture? Know what you know about judo. This is a picture of the Commonwealth medals in Glasgow. Anybody notice anything that was wrong? So 13 medals. You might say 13 medals from 14. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, it's always wrong. 13 medals from 14. There's always one person who doesn't get a medal. Actually, there's only 12 medals there, so that's a historic moment for Scottish judo. It became the most successful sport in any single Commonwealth Games, and some muppet forgot to bring his medal for the historic. But what that kind of reminds me is it's very. I've been, I suppose, horrified by how cynical I've become as a coach. And I've actually heard myself saying of athletes who are good athletes, this job would be easy if it wasn't for the athletes. I've actually heard not saying it with irony, actually saying that and meaning it. And I suppose one of the things that what does that mean to me? Is that coaching made me a lot more cynical. Not working as a national coach has made me a lot more cynical because you do get the athlete, it's a pain in the bum. You do get the coach, the parent, however, who's not quite doing what you want them to do. But I think if you can flip that around, and go, okay, that guy did mess up, because the guy who never got a medal had the better. We expected him to win a medal, But why did it not? Instead of looking at it as a negative, look at it as a positive, and what is? And I think then the seeds of direction for your own personal development or the team's development are in there. And likewise, the guy whose medal wasn't there, his medal wasn't there because it was a silver medal, and he didn't value the silver medal. He didn't come to win silver. It was his last tournament, So it's that coming out of last year kind of resonates with me as well. There is always one. And a lot of time there will be pains. The athlete will be a pain in the bum, but let's don't try and become cynical. Look at it and what does that mean for the direction of future CPD. There's another slide, but I broke it. That's kind of me. I suppose just in summary, where I am with my coaching, I've had a number of coaching philosophy. I've got a file on my laptop, and over the year I've kind of, I came into coaching around about, do you have UKCC? So I kind of came into coaching just about the kind of, in the conception at UKCC, and I think one of the UKC level 1 enduros, write your coaching philosophy. And so I've got a file with, about 100 coaching philosophies in there. Some of them sound like Stephen Hawking, some of them sound like David Brent. Most of them haven't lasted, I've binned it as soon as I've finished it. But I'm pleased to say, with my coaching philosophy, as at this point in time, it's kind of been the one I've kind of stuck. It's the one that stayed with me the longest. And my philosophy at this point in time is, I look to create art through effort, and it's probably another 20 minutes to go through and talk of that. But I think one of the reasons that it fits with me so well, because it's not really just a coaching philosophy. I think it kind of fits in for a philosophy of how to live, and certainly it brings in, it kind of encapsulates my thoughts around my own personal development. So I think that's round about me on time. So thank you very much for listening. If you get any questions, I'll be about, or I don't know if we're taking questions, if anybody has any questions. Okay, but I'll be about for a little bit. If you have any questions, please feel free to come and call me. Thank you very much.